friends, Dylan Bates here with The Final Cut Bro. I have a really exciting tutorial for you today, and that is just taking a look at my workflow for creating immersive sound design in my videos. And I'm really excited about this because I also get to give away a full free year of music and sound effects to Soundstripe. So we will actually be using their audio library, but it should be noted that literally everything that's done in this video can be done with any sound effects. So you're not limited if you don't have Soundstripe. But if you do want to get Soundstripe at the end of this and you don't happen to win the contest that I'll be announcing the winner for next week, I do have a discount code for 10% off. If you use discount code TheFinalCutBro at checkout, you'll get 10% off. And I really do strongly recommend that, like, instead of buying gear or something, you purchase really good sound design elements for your videos. I think that is possibly the #1 area to really level up your game and really make you stand out as a creator. But yeah, at the end of this video, I will have information on how you can enter to win the giveaway, and I am so excited to give that to one of you guys. So you can kind of get a look at what we have here as our end product, and I'll show you how to build this out and kind of my workflow for creating a sound environment like we did at the intro of this video. So let's go ahead and create a new project. We'll just push Command N, immersive sound, or whatever you want to call it. But let's go ahead and drop in. I got this stock shot from pixabay.com, and I'll have a link to it if you're interested. It's honestly a really sweet shot, so I'm surprised it's free, and it's in slow-mo, but I wanted this to be in real time, so we're just going to push Command R, and we are going to set the speed to 2 times because I believe it was shot at 60 frames per second. So now that's looking like real time. The first thing I look at is the environment and the story I'm trying to tell through the environment. So as you can see here, this looks like a really cool post-apocalyptic kind of world. Maybe there's a nuclear bomb that went off, there's radiation in the air, stuff is ready to collapse. So I take all of those things into mind when I'm trying to create the sound environment in my videos. So the first thing I like to start off with is the underlying sound that's going to kind of play out through the entire scene. So that could be something like, if you're, working with a forest scene, you've got birds going on, you've got light breezes. So I like to build that stuff first before adding in the more subtle sound effects of like footsteps and whatnot. So the first thing we're going to want to look at is, let's go ahead and jump on over to Soundstripe real quick, and I'll show you kind of how to use their sound effects library. So let's go and do that. Okay, so when we open up Soundstripe, we'll just hop on over to their sound effects panel here. In here, we have so many options here on the left-hand side, and a lot of these, when you click on it, let's say I click on cinematic, will kind of open up into subcategories. So it can be really useful for getting around quickly. If you have an idea in mind but don't know quite what to call it, this might, strike inspiration. So the first thing I was thinking is, okay, this building is kind of going to collapse. So I looked up creek, and I just kind of went through here, and the first ones, were kind of on the lighter side. So as I was going down, I started listening to a bunch of these, and I got into these creek lows, and this is where I found the perfect sound effect. There's this creek extreme low sequence. And that just immediately makes me think of building going to collapse, post-apocalyptic world. So that was what I downloaded. So all I needed to do is come on over to the license button, click that, and then you just type in what your project title is. So I've been just labeling this off of my tutorials. And then we just select what it's for, and this is for YouTube, but you have all these other options to choose from, and you just push generate license. And then that'll let you download it, and I strongly recommend you just create a folder with all of your sound effects. So I have a ton of sounds in here that I went through and found using this, just kind of planning out what I thought it would sound like in my head beforehand, and then just kind of searching along those terms. So like I looked up footsteps, I looked up just like a low humming and buzz for the flashlight, and just various things like that to bring the world together. So I found a bunch of sound effects, and then I just type in Command I, find my sound effects folder, and import that. And sometimes you'll find that they're blue like that. And I like to label these according to what they are. So this is a sound effect, so I'll right click it, go down to assign audio roles, and set that as an effect. Okay, so we've got this all sorted out. And this might actually be easier to be able to just read the names of what they are. So let's go ahead and click on this button here, and that will give us kind of a list view, and we can extend out the names so we can actually read what we have here. So to get started, let's go ahead and build our base layer. Let's find that extreme low that we were just playing with, and we'll go ahead and drag that in. And I'll actually push Option W and give us a little space off the beginning so we can kind of build the sound effects into it. And we'll cut that out. And then we'll just play that. And already that's adding a lot to this scene. So the next thing we'll want to do is find something that kind of sits in the higher to mid-tone area for sound effects sitting in the background. So I immediately was looking at this scene, and I was noticing, the wall kind of looks like it's a little wet or something. So maybe there's water dripping in here. So it made me think to look up like drip sounds on Soundstripe, and I found this really cool soft rain gutter sound. I'll play that. And that immediately makes me think of kind of like a dark, damp cave or something along those lines. And it worked really, really well in this scene. So if I disable that, and it's got just a really nice feeling to it. So now if I enable both of these and they play together, it immediately adds so much to this scene. Now, I think these sound effects are coming in a little too hot, so let's go ahead and select both of them. And you can actually push Control plus or minus to lower the sound effects by singular decibels. So you can kind of see that line moving up and down. But if you have like a mini keyboard, like on my iMac, I just have a mini keyboard, you're going to actually have to push that function key as well. So we can just lower those a bit. The next thing I would like to add is kind of a wind sound, and that's going to hit more of the mid-tones for this scene. And that's a really important thing when you're working with sound design, is hitting both the lows and the highs and the mid-tones, and kind of really expanding your environment by having all of the ranges. Let's go ahead and find the sound effect I used was wind. There's this wind 2, and this one actually comes built into Final Cut Pro. So you can hop into your sound library here, just search up wind, and you can find it here. So I will just drag that onto our scene here. So we've got this wind sound. If I play that, that's a little bit more mid-rangey. So we got our very low, our high, and our mid-range area here, and we can lower that sound. And you can also drag this line here, and if you want more fine adjustments, you can push Command, and that will give you, a little bit more fine-tuning adjustments. So we can drag that down. Now, something with this wind is it sounds a little bit too present in this location. So I'm going to add this muffled effect, and you can just search up muffled over here. And this will make it sound like it's on the outside of the building a little bit more. So we'll just muffle that a bit. And now that wind sound sounds like it's coming from outside. And we are getting all of the ranges. Okay, so from here, we are going to want to work on the footsteps. And this is a tedious process, but I'll share a few tips on speeding it up. My number one tip is to just select your clip, go forward, and every time he takes a step, where you think the sound effect would begin, I will push M, and that will create a marker here. So we can just create markers for every footstep, and that'll speed up our workflow a lot, because if we're constantly adding, we're going to probably add 2, maybe 3 layers of sound effects for the footsteps, and that can take a lot of time, but if you know exactly where they're happening, it'll speed you up quite a bit. So I'm just going to go through, push M, and we'll just find every single footstep. Okay, so I have every one of his footsteps marked out, I believe. Hopefully I didn't miss any. And now we get to go on to the fun process of adding footsteps. What you'll want to do with footsteps is really take note of what type of texture of ground he is stepping on. So in here, he's definitely on a concrete surface, but you'll see all these little rocks and stuff that is going to add a little bit of grit to what he's stepping on. So it's not just the concrete, but there'll be scuffing of dirt and grime on the floor, and if you take that into consideration, it's going to add so much more depth to your scene. So I've got a few sound effects. The first one is actually built into Final Cut Pro, I believe. So you'll just hop into your sound library and we can search up concrete and hopefully we can find it. Yeah, here's the footsteps hard concrete, and we just want the scuff sound. So go ahead and drag your sound effect just down onto your timeline here. And all we will do, it's a little bit tedious. I actually like to zoom in a bit. And just a quick side note, because you're going to want to get these frame perfect. So if you push your comma and period keys, that'll just adjust everything by 1 frame. We'll just find our first scene. And we can increase the scale of our sound effects here just so we can really see what's going on. As I play this, let's go ahead and mute the others. So if I push Option S, that'll solo it, or you can push the solo button right there, the headphones. So we'll just play through and find every time he takes a step in the sound waves and then place that accordingly to our marker. So we are just going to cut this up, and I like to get as much length out of each step as I can. So we'll just select that. We can push Command B, or you can just push B and cut it. And then we can click that and we can adjust it by a few frames. And that's a good sound effect because he's like placing his weight on there. So we'll just keep slicing this up, and this process can take a long time, but it's worth it in the end. It's going to add so much depth to your scene if you take the time to do stuff like this. We've got a few more, but the sound effect doesn't quite lead out, so it's really simple to just copy a few of these, and we will duplicate them over here. I did Option, click and drag, and that'll duplicate. And they are disabled because we are soloed, so let's go ahead and we'll just reselect those. Option S to solo. Perfect. Okay, so we've got all of our bass footsteps happening. And let's go ahead and select all these. Bring this over, Command B, and that'll cut all of them. And we can delete that just to end it right there. And we can delete that other footstep. Okay, so now if I play this, we're getting some footsteps, but they sound pretty out of place. And so we got to work with both getting a little bit more grit and weight to his steps, and then we'll add in some reverb to really place it in this location. So the next sound effect that I got was, I believe, this folly step on the gritty stone. And I like this one a lot because it's got a lot of weight, but I think most of the weight of his steps is happening in those first few steps. So we don't want this on every single step, but just some of those moments where he really places a lot of weight on his leg. Let's go ahead and just see how that sounds. And I will actually disable these. Select them all, push V. That'll disable them. That first step doesn't actually have very much weight to it, so let's wait till the second step, maybe right in there. Yeah, and he puts a lot of weight on that leg. Perfect. And let's see if he's got another heavy step coming up here. He does put a lot of weight on that leg because he's stepping over the step. So let's go ahead and perfect. So we've got some weight to his stepping. And let's go ahead and add in a few more scuffs in areas where it looks like his foot is kind of sliding on the ground. And we can turn that down a little bit. That one might be a little bit too intense. Let's turn that audio down. I think, especially when like you take your first step, you're unsure, so you have your foot there and you're gonna slide on it. So let's get one in there. Perfect. We can get rid of that. Maybe fade that out just to clean up some of the audio. And this one, I think right in here is gonna have a little bit more gravel and grit to it. I think some of these are coming in a little bit late too. So let's go ahead and move that back a frame or so, just to make it really plant when his foot is planting. Oh, there's a great moment where he really slides his foot. So let's go ahead and put in some audio there. Even slide it a little earlier. Great. Okay, so then I'm gonna leave this last footstep here, but we'll cut this with the audio, fade that out. Great. Okay, so we've got our footsteps in place. Let's go ahead and select them all by clicking and dragging. Push Option G or right click and do new compound clip. And then we are going to just call this footsteps. And let's dive into the footsteps. Come to the very end of all of your footsteps and just push Option W. So if you push Option W, that'll actually create a gap clip. And we just want a gap at the end of this to work with some reverb that we're going to be adding. So let's go ahead and back on out using this back arrow here. That'll take us into our main scene. Go ahead and select your footsteps, and we are just going to search up for reverb, which I already have it here. And then we are just going to bring in this AU matrix reverb. We'll place that on, and if I just play this by itself, you'll see how much more immersive this is in the scene. So that adds so much. Here's the before. So it really, really places him in the scene. And it's great because it's already on this medium Hall 3 by default, but you can play around with these as much as you want. I actually like the medium Hall for this particular scene. So then let's go ahead and bring the sound on this way down. So just click that, push Command, and that'll give us some fine tuning over it. And we'll just want it pretty subtle in the background. Great. Okay, so now we can enable everything else. We'll click and drag, push V to enable, and let's see how this is looking. I think some of these are getting a little too quiet. We can bring those up by pushing Option, clicking on this sound bar here, and we can just drag that up a little bit. It's sounding much more like he's there. So the reverb really, really takes you a long way. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and add in some dynamic sound effects. They're more stylistic. They aren't so much realistic, but they bring you into the scene. So we want to draw attention to this flashlight. The thing with this flashlight is I feel like it might be buzzing or something if you had your ear right up next to it. With that, I just looked up an electric buzz on Soundstripe, and I found some cool stuff. Let's see. I think this is the one I ended up using. Nope, not that one. That's the one. So it made me think of almost like a fluorescent light or something, and it really added a lot to this scene. So let's go ahead and drag that on down. And this is just going to play throughout the entire scene, and we can disable everything there. When this scene first opens up, this buzz is going to want to be really loud to really draw attention to the flashlight there. But as he waves it around and like points it away from the camera, I think it adds a lot to almost drop the sound out. So that we have a few ways to do this. My favorite way for something like this is to push R, and that'll give us this range tool. And we can click and drag along and just find where he brings it back to the camera. So right there. So we'll just drag this with our range tool, and then we can click and drag the sound on this way down. And you know what I should have done first? I should have dropped the sound level on all of this first. So let's go ahead and just select the whole thing. Bring that down. Perfect. Okay, I think that's a good level there. And so he's dropping it, and this is where he brings it back up. Okay, so we'll just come on back here. And then we'll just drag the sound on this way down. That might be dropping a little bit too much. Because it's always there, but when he points it in the camera, it really draws attention to itself. Another way we can do this is push Option and create some keyframes there. And then we'll come to where he is raising the flashlight up again. Now I will say, I think this hum is actually a little bit too low. So let's go ahead and bring up the pitch. So we'll just look up the pitch tool, and we can just drag this up just a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring back all the other sound effects. Perfect. And let's see, I don't know how this will work, but let's just try throwing some reverb on there and see how that sounds. It's all just playing around with the audio and really getting it to feel real, and not draw too much attention to itself, but enough to make the scene work. Cool. I think that is working for us. So I really like bringing in a scene with a big hit, and that just kind of draws your audience in and goes, oh, what's going on? It's one of my secrets to making something look cinematic. What I like to do is bring in like a whoosh. So we got a nice cinematic whoosh here that I got off of Soundstripe, and I'll just solo that. So that sounds really, really cool. And we can just bring this so it hits right at the beginning. The peak happens at the beginning. Perfect. And then I also like to get like a nice boom. And that's just to really draw your audience into the scene right away. And that's hitting a little bit early, so we'll just bring that over a few frames. Perfect. And let's bring the volume down on that. So the last thing I want to add is a little riser at the end to kind of denote that there is something bad going to happen. So we got a few options. I like this one. It's in that higher frequency range, which most of our stuff is kind of low to mid range. So it really draws a lot to it. Let's go ahead and try that out. Great. And I'll even extend that out. Perfect. And then we could, we got a lot of risers to play with. This one's kind of cool too. I could drag it in. It's a very long one, so it kind of takes up the whole scene. So if I play this, and let's bring the volume way down on this one. There we go. Boom. We have just made a really immersive experience through sound design. So I hope this had a little bit of interesting insight for you. I think that sound is one of the most important tools we have as editors, and just as filmmakers in general. Sound can really, really bring a lot to a scene. So always just be considering like, what sound effects can I bring to what we are looking at? try and consider everything that's happening in the scene, and that'll take you a really long way. So it's time for the first of the 2 1,000 subscriber giveaways that I'm getting to do, partnering with Soundstripe. So thank you so much, Soundstripe, for making this possible. Also, if you don't win, make sure you use my discount code below, TheFinalCutBro, and that'll give you 10% off. It does give me a small commission, so it also supports this channel. But I think you will be very happy with what they have to offer. Let's go ahead and get into the giveaway. We are gonna do this the old-fashioned way. We're gonna draw names out of a cup. So I got myself this mug here, and I filled it with all of the names of everybody who left a comment in last week's video. So I'm just gonna shake this bad boy up. There it is. Let's see who we got. The winner for this week's video is Jay Johnson. So congratulations, Jay Johnson, for winning this week's giveaway. If you guys want to enter for next week, just go ahead and comment on this video and use hashtag FCB1K giveaway, and that'll let me know that you want to be entered. Also, if you share this video on any social media, so like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and use hashtag FCB1K giveaway, I will give you 5 extra entries to win next week. So make sure you do that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.